Hey, it's your girl, Hayley Mulenda, or should I say, aka Mrs. Record, yeah. And welcome to the Building You podcast. Should I introduce myself? Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Mrs. R to the C to the R to the E to the C-O-R-D, Mrs. Record. I can't believe I literally forgot how to spell my last name. Your girl is married now. I literally just got married to the love of my life, Sterling Record. And I'm so excited to be back. It's been a year since I last recorded a podcast. This is the Building You podcast, where it's all about building you whilst you build your empire. It's all about building you whilst you build your finances, build your spiritual walk, whilst you build your health walk, whilst you are on that journey of evolving. This is about building you, right? Because I think a lot of the times society is all about build your empire, build your finances, build. And I think sometimes we can neglect ourselves in the process. So I'm just here to come say, guys, this is about building you. This is about focusing on you. It's your self-development podcast. I am your biggest cheerleader. I'm here to speak life into you in areas that sometimes you forget to speak life into yourself. It's been a long time since I literally done a podcast. It's been over a year. The last time I recorded a podcast was at the end of 2021. I was engaged and now I'm married, and it's actually a beautiful thing to be able to watch yourself and look at your growth. I want this episode to be about being able to look at yourself and congratulate yourself for growth. I think a lot of the times we can be so quick to see other people's growth and we can neglect our own. We neglect the process of what we've actually had to go through to get that growth. I think we can literally just negate and neglect the growth we have been through. And I think it's really important for you to help be able to reflect on that. And I'm really proud of myself. I'm really proud of myself in being able to navigate some of the situations I've been able to navigate, being able to adapt, being able to adjust. If there's anything that I've learned in life, is being able to adjust and adapt, because life comes with its curveballs. And if you're not willing to adapt and adjust, you're going to find yourself in very uncomfortable situations. I don't really have a structure on how this episode's going to go. I just want this episode to be raw, vulnerable, honest on how my year has been, and I guess the reason why I've taken so long to come back. I literally have been telling myself that, I'm going to come back next week, and I've been telling myself that for a year. And I realized that earlier this year, I could not come on a podcast. I could not. I was leading and bleeding. Guys, there is so much danger in being able to lead and bleed, because you bleed on other people. I found myself being in a place where I was publicly bleeding, I was loudly bleeding, and I had to just take myself away. I had to take myself away from others. I had to take myself away from the podcasting, a lot of speaking engagements, and just heal and just work on myself. One of the worst things you can do is to get on a platform and you're bleeding, and that's not to come and say that you're going to ever get to a place where you're perfectly healed. I don't think that we're ever going to get to a place where we don't need God anymore, because if you don't need God anymore, you're not going to need to be here. I think we're always going to be in a place where we're going to constantly be praying or constantly seeking God or constantly seeking his goodness or something. But I found that it was actually going to be quite detrimental to myself if I got on a podcast or on a platform where I knew that I wasn't taking care of myself. As I said, it's all about building you, right? And I needed 2022 to be a year that I built me, especially when I was about to get married. I started this blog called Journey to Wifehood, and I want to bring that back, because that was a place where I could really be honest and vulnerable about my journey to becoming a wife, my fears, and just the fact that I actually found that even when I was engaged, I had so many doubts. There's a clip on our wedding trailer. So we released a wedding trailer on our social media platforms, basically, obviously just summarizing our whole wedding day. And at the end of the clip, there's this one clip that really made me tear up, and it said, "We made it." It's me and my husband at the altar, and during our vows, just even before my husband started our vows, he said, "We made it." And I remember just tearing up, because I know what we went through to get there. There's certain moments that you look at, or certain moments in your life where you're just like, I know what I went through to get here. The reason why sometimes social media is so dangerous is because social media puts this thing where you see success and you don't see process. And I feel like 2022 was my year of processing. I feel like God had to do a work in me before he could do a work through me. I had to go through a heavy season of forgiveness. I went through a time in my life where I cut off quite a few people this year, and I restored relationship, praise God. But at the time when I was cutting people off, it was, yes, with justified reason, but I had a lot of bitterness. I think when you're about to get married, so many things erupt, so many things arise, from family to friends. There was conversations. I had a lot of hard conversations. I think when you're in the process of evolving, in the process of getting to a better place, I find that hard conversations will be necessary. The first and most important hard conversation you're going to have is with yourself. I think I had a lot of hard conversations with myself this year. I had to speak to myself and really be like, Hayley, what's going on? To have hard conversations with yourself is actually very scary. I always come and say, to commit to someone else isn't as hard to commit to yourself and to commit to healing. To commit to healing is a very scary thing. I don't think many people are actually scared to commit to other people, or even commit to, success. People always come and say people's biggest fear is to fail. No, I think a lot of people's biggest fear is to heal. Because to face your trauma is a very scary thing. 2022, I went face to face with my trauma. I feel like God had to allow me to see my trauma so that I could really heal through it. A lot of people talk about how they want to heal and how they want to evolve. But you can't heal and evolve until you face your trauma, until you face your wounds, until you face the person that has hurt you. And sometimes the person that's hurt yourself the most is you. Can we talk about the process of forgiving ourselves? This year I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself for a lot of decisions that I made, especially leading up to my wedding. I made a lot of decisions that I'm not happy with. I don't regret them. But there's something that one of my mentees taught me. Her name's Nu. She's amazing. She taught me something about Godspeed, where you have to learn to forgive that version of yourself because you made the best decision at the time that you thought it was. And I think a lot of the times we don't know how to forgive ourselves for decisions that we make at a version that we're not at anymore. And this is why I have to come and say I'm proud of myself, because I know the version of who I was at the end of 2021 to the version of who I am at the end of 22. We're two complete different women. And I don't agree with a lot of decisions that I made at the end of 2021, but I'm so proud of myself to look back and come and say I didn't stay in those decisions, that I took myself out of them places. Like, if I come and talk about 2022 and some decisions that I made, and the mad thing is that a lot of people wouldn't even know this, because obviously social media doesn't tell the whole story. I remember having certain conversations with Sterling, and Sterling being so concerned about my mental health and being so concerned about my emotional health, because I found that I think sometimes when you're so scared of something new, when you're so scared of something you're not used to, you'll self-sabotage it. And I was so close to self-sabotaging my marriage. I was so close to self-sabotaging what God had for me. And I find that when you don't heal, you'll self-sabotage. My daily prayer is, God, guide me. God, remove anything in me, remove any desire that will self-sabotage the desire you have for me. That is my daily prayer. Because to entertain trauma is more promising. To entertain trauma is sometimes easier to entertain God's breakthrough for you, to entertain God's freedom for you. I'm going to say that again, guys. Sometimes to entertain your own trauma is easier to entertain God's breakthrough and God's freedom for you. And I found that at the beginning of 2022, I somewhat was entertaining my own trauma before I was entertaining God's freedom. And I nearly self-sabotaged my marriage. What do I mean by that? I started to write myself off of the idea of getting married, number one. I started to believe I wasn't worthy. I didn't think I would be good enough. I didn't think I would be able to contribute enough, not just in terms of to my marriage, but also to Sterling, to myself. I felt the pressure was getting worse. Like I felt like the pressure, the pressure to hold everything together was getting worse. And it got to a point in 2022, I broke. Break as in BREAK, as in I broke before God. And I needed that. And I'm so happy that I did, because, you know, a lot of the times we can be holding ourselves up, and God never actually asked us to hold ourselves up. You know, the Bible actually says boast in your weakness so that we can find his strength. And I found that I was boasting in my own strength. And through boasting in my own strength, I actually ended up being more weak. And I found that I needed to just let free. I needed God to just do a work in me. And I felt like the only way that could really happen was just being broken before him. And that was so hard. And I'm just so grateful to be in a relationship with my husband, who is not just my biggest cheerleader, but he's my biggest mirror. Listen, let me tell you something about love. Love is a mirror. Iron sharpens iron, but love is a mirror. Love will expose you. It will make you so naked. It will expose your scars, your insecurities, your fear. And if you're not ready to share that with somebody, don't entertain love. I understand why the Bible says, don't awaken love before it's time, because love will expose you. Love had exposed me this year. I got so scared of falling in love. And it's not to come and say I already fell in love. I already fell in love with Sterling before I got engaged to him. But the level of love and depth of love I have now when I'm married to him, and even now that I'm intimate with him, because we abstained from sex, right? I didn't have sex with my husband before we got married. And he's actually the first guy I've ever had sex with. So realistically, the level of intimacy, the level of love I have for my husband, he's the only person. And just to kind of like have that and experience that, it does something to you. And I was just so scared to entertain it. I was so scared to experience it, because, as I said, when you understand what love does and the depth of love, it's a very scary thing. And you know what? I just want to encourage you guys to make sure you work on yourself. Make sure you do everything you can to not sabotage what God has for you. Because it is just so easy to write yourself out of the promises of God. I don't think that God can ever write you out of his own promises. I think you can, though. I think that you can self-sabotage yourself out of what God has for you. I think a lot of the times we are blaming the devil and blaming the enemy for things we have sabotaged ourselves out of. We come and say, oh, the devil's a liar. No, you're the liar. You're the liar. You're the person that has lied to yourself. You're the person that has lied to yourself and said you're okay. You're the person that's lied to yourself and said you're over it. You're the person that's lied to yourself and said, I don't need to do this, or I don't need to heal. I don't need therapy. I don't need counseling. You're lying. You need it. You better run. You better run. I ran away from my healing for so long. I say it again, and I always say this, that people do not fear failing. People fear healing. People do not fear failing. They fear healing. Because to face your own trauma, sometimes entertaining your trauma is easier than entertaining God's breakthrough and God's freedom. It's so much easier. And guys, I just wanted to come and say, guys, can you pursue healing, please? Can you pursue freedom? Because that is the most liberating thing that you can do. And I really do believe that God is so faithful and God is so great that he'll remove you from anything that can take you out of his promises. I think a lot of times we can look at things happening around us and we're like, God, why me? Why me? No, God, thank you. You should actually be thanking God for some of the things that are happening to you right now. Because not everything that's happening to you is actually happening to you. It's actually happening for you. Some of the things that happened to me this year were things that I needed. And at the time and in the place, I felt like it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But now, to be on the other side, I completely understand why God's hand was there and why God allowed me to go through it. I think a lot of the times we focus on the God of success and we don't recognize the power of the God of suffering. The God that is in us in our suffering. The God that is with us in our suffering. Suffering sometimes is necessary so that God has access to your soul. Guys, in 2022, I experienced something called suffering. To suffer, to be broken before God, to be broken in him, to be broken, to not want to wake up, to entertaining suicidal thoughts, to entertaining a life where you just wanted to end everything. I faced a moment like that this year. And I'm actually really happy that I did. Because now when I can look back at it, it's in my suffering that I really encountered God. Sometimes we are asking God for new levels of intimacy and we're not ready for that. Do you know why you're not ready for that? Because in order for God to have more access to your soul, there has to be a deepening of suffering. Because it's only when something is broken, that's when God can mend it. It's only when something is shattered, that's when God can fix it. And we want the fixing, but we don't want the shattering. And I'm really happy that this year I faced something where I was shattered. I got shattered this year. Shattered differently, fam. As in, shattered. But I don't regret it. Like, I'm just so grateful to God because I just know that if I didn't go through a season where I felt like I went through a season in my life earlier this year where I couldn't even pray. I went through a season of my life where I left my church. I went through a season of my life where I completely left. I don't want to say I left faith. I can't leave God. I feel like I love God so much. And I had such strong encounters with God. I couldn't leave my faith. But I left. I had no faith though. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember when there'll be times when Sterling would be like, come on, babe, let's pray. And I'll be like, what's the point of praying? I don't think anyone would have seen the season and the cycle and the pain I would have gone through other than my husband. And I'm so grateful that he extended so much grace and allowed me to really journey that out with God. I was so offended with faith. I was so offended with God. I was so offended with anything that looks like God, church, ministry, worship. I couldn't even listen to a worship song without just being sick and feeling sick. I found myself locking myself in my room and drinking alcohol. I generally found myself not necessarily becoming an alcoholic, but actually getting into a habit of drinking alcohol, getting drunk, and just entertaining things that, because at that point I wanted to entertain my trauma more than I wanted to entertain freedom. I wasn't trying to let God in. But in the time that I did, I knew that the only way I could let God in was in the depth of my suffering. And this episode is about letting God in the depth of your suffering. Healing can't take place until you suffer. Yeah, healing can't take place until you allow God to break you. Molding has to be with a battered clay. I understand when the Bible says like he's got potter's hand, because God can't mold something that's already molded. He's got to mold something that has no form. No form. And to be molded by God and to be, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. It's so hard. And I'm just so happy I went through that. I think I shared that I didn't really have any structure of this podcast interview, but I wanted to let you know that, is this season 3? I don't know. I want to even call this season 1. Season 1 of Building You with Hayley Mulenda, because I actually feel like I know myself now. I feel like it's not to come and say all the other podcast episodes don't carry weight, or all the other podcast episodes I was an imposter. I just feel like this version of myself, I like this version of myself because I went through a lot of healing to get here. I went through a lot of nakedness to get through here. I went through a lot of vulnerability and transparency with not just God, myself, with my husband, with my friends. I've done that throughout the whole of 2022, and I know there's so much more to come. I think the beauty of Building You podcast is I would love my children to one time come across these episodes and hear about their mother before she gave birth to them, and kind of journey as I evolve. You guys have been journeying with me. I started this podcast when I was, I think, 22 or 23. I started this podcast when I was single. I started this podcast when I was not in a relationship. I just got into a relationship just when I started my podcast, literally. Just when I started my podcast is when I got in a relationship with Sterling. And then after a while, obviously, I started being more open about it. But yeah, I started speaking to Sterling just after I started my podcast. So you guys, if you go to my first ever podcast episode, I was very much single and there was no one that I was thinking about or no one I was talking to. But yeah, now I'm a whole married woman. So just to even go through that journey and to document this journey, I really want to be transparent about the journey. I think the concept of building, Rome was not built in a day, right? To build yourself doesn't happen in a day. To build yourself will take years, decades, maybe even a century if God gives you, the ability to say over 100 years. But God will really do a building work in you over a period of time. And I wanted to come on here and just kind of be open and honest, and I guess give a snippet of what my year has been about, and also apologize. I've had some of you guys DM me. I've had some of you guys come on my TikTok comments and be like, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? I'm back now. I'm back, and I just want to say I'm in a really healthy place. I'm in a great place. I love being married. I always say being married is like having a never-ending sleepover with your best friend, and I literally have married my best friend. Like, Sterling is probably the best thing that's happened to me after giving my life to Christ. I love my husband so much. There is no one who is more gentle than him. There was no one that is more caring than him. He is so intentional with my heart. He is so intentional with praying for me, praying with me. To have a man that is so willing to go before God and intercede on your behalf. God, if I could cry talking about my husband, because he has literally been the biggest blessing. As I said, guys, earlier this year, I had no faith. As in, to get to church, to listen to gospel, to listen to anything to do with God, I was not on it. I did not want it. I was broken and I did not want to let God in. And my husband prayed for me. My husband said, you're going to see this through, babe. You're going to see God in this. Listen, ladies, let me tell you about why you need a godly man. I'm not talking about a godly man that is just going to send you scripture. I'm talking about a godly man that is going to intercede for you and show you who God is. I'm talking about a godly man who's going to show you the depth of God's heart. Guys, can I tell you to please get with someone who will show you God, that will show you the goodness of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God, and someone that will hold you to a godly standard. Because I'm not going to lie, if someone comes and tells you, yo, yeah, I want to be with you, you're a Christian, yeah, but they're trying to sex you before marriage, realistically, no. Why? Because they have to hold you to a godly standard. But we'll talk about that in another episode when I bring my husband on here. But I just wanted to come on here and really honestly say that 2022, I remember God saying to me, let all things be new. And to entertain new, sometimes you really have to let go of the old. And to let go of the old sometimes would be uncomfortable. It would be painful. Because, yeah, you're just so used to just, what you're used to. If you are constantly drinking juice, if you're drinking juice every single day, and then one day you just start to drink water, at first you're going to taste that water and be like, ew, the water's healthy for you, but you've been drinking juice. The juice is sugary. And now when you start to drink something that's healthier, at first when you start to taste it, you're going to dislike it. But let me just tell you, sometimes what's good for you, you're going to dislike it. I remember listening to a podcast literally today that was talking about a lot of people need to stop entertaining the Jesus walk. And let me just say, I'm not here to entertain the Jesus walk. I'm not here to entertain the walk or the idea of the fact that, yeah, when you walk by faith, it's going to be easy. When you walk by faith, you're constantly going to be favored. When you walk by faith, you're not going to have trials. You're not going to have suffering. Guys, I already told you, sometimes you need suffering for God to access your soul. We talk about the God of success, but we don't talk about the God of suffering. We don't talk about the God that wants to see you in the pit. Can I get it? I didn't come and say that sometimes God wants to see you down. But sometimes God needs to see you in the prison. Why? So that when you get to the palace, you can know it's God that took you out of there. Sometimes you need God in the mud. So that when you get to the up there, you know it was God that took you out there. Don't forget the God that took you out of your mud. Don't you ever forget the God that took you out of your prison. Don't you ever in your life. Listen, I'm at a place in my life where I'm more bold about my faith more than ever before, because I know the God that took me out of the pit, bruv. I know the God that took me out of prison, bruv. I know the prison I was in. I know the shackles I was in. I know the things that I faced earlier this year when I was drinking alcohol nearly to my own detriment this year. Nearly locking off my marriage this year. And it's not anything to do with Sterling. All because of me. I had a moment where I was crying to my mum, bruv. And I literally said to my mum, I don't think I can get married. And I was weeping to my mum saying, Mum, I don't think I can do this. And she said to me, Hayley, you're going to have to. You're going to have to. Because it was in that moment where facing my fears and facing my trauma, I'd rather entertain my trauma rather than entertain my breakthrough and my freedom. Guys, to heal, I could never come here and say I'm self-made. I could never get on any stage or any platform and say, God, I made me. God did that. God did that because I know where I needed to self-sabotage myself. I know the moments where I nearly sabotaged and took myself out of God's promises because of the fear of entertaining breakthrough and the craving to entertain trauma. Because trauma sometimes is enticing because you're so used to it. As I said, when all you've been drinking is sugary drinks and someone presents you water that is cleansing, that is healthy, that is liberating, it's going to taste so disgusting. And even though you know it's better than you, you will always go to the thing that you find the most comfort in, even if it's not, you know, it's to your detriment. And that's what trauma and healing looks like sometimes. And I'm just so happy that I allowed this year to be my year prioritizing my healing. I was in therapy, I was in counseling. And slowly but surely, I built up my faith again. Surely, but, you know, I want to give a word of wisdom and some encouragement for anyone right now who's finding it really hard to build up their faith, find it really hard to build up their trust in God again and to let God in. One, take every day as it comes. Get around people who will pray for you, pray with you, people that will just show you God's goodness, people that will extend grace. My husband really showed so much grace and so much compassion. My love language is to pray for people. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to pray for you. I think it's just so easy to allow life to take your hope and your faith away. And I think I let life and trauma do that to me. But I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to really deepen my faith as well. Because as I said, guys, I was in such a deep pit this year. And no one would have ever known. I took about 7 weeks off my socials. If you've been following me on socials, you will know that earlier this year, I took some time off my socials. Yeah, I was off socials from like January until mid-February. I was only on TikTok because TikTok, I'm not gonna lie, I'm addicted to TikTok. I love TikTok. You'll find me on TikTok, child. If you don't find me anywhere, I'm on TikTok. But TikTok was like the only app I was on. But I deleted my Instagram, I deleted my Twitter, Facebook. I didn't want any of it. I did not care. I just didn't want any of it. And I remember literally getting to a place where I was just like, you know what, God? If it's not real, I don't want it. And I just felt like I wasn't being real. Do you know what I mean? Like I felt like I wasn't being real with myself, first of all. I thought I wasn't being real with God, second of all. So I just had to lock everything off, you know what I mean? And yeah, just having those moments, those vulnerable moments with God where I cried before him, was like, God, like, if you don't touch me and if you don't save me from this pit right now, I don't think I'm seeing the end of the year. Like, I feel it got that deep. I think it got to that point where I was like, I wasn't even seeing myself getting married, but I wasn't even seeing myself get to the end of the year. And I remember just having some of those hard conversations with Sterling where I was like, babe, I don't think I can do this. I don't think, it was nothing about Sterling. It was all about just being scared to be free. And I'm just proud of myself for breaking out of my trauma. I'm proud of myself for breaking out of what I felt was normal. It's not normal. It's not normal to live in your trauma. It's not normal to entertain it. And I really pray that this episode will encourage you to seek the healing that works for you. Whether that's counseling, whether that's church, whether that's therapy. Get around people who love you. Love saved me. Having amazing friends, my best friend, my family, my mum, my brothers, my sisters, my bridesmaids. I don't think they even realize how much they saved me. Just through being patient with me, loving on me. I needed that. I needed that sisterhood. I needed that encouragement. Sometimes you don't know what people are going through, and your words can literally carry them in that season. And there's just so many people that encouraged me, prayed for me when I was in a crazy season. We had so many prophetic words said over Sterling and I by different people, different pastors, people we don't even know, people calling, being like, who are Hayley and Sterling? I keep hearing them in my spirit. We need to pray for this couple. And them not knowing that we was going through hell. But we still would show up, and we would still, I don't want to say we pretended, because it did get to a point where I literally felt like it was me, Sterling, and God. Like, it literally got to a point where I was like, yeah, me, you, and God. Like, that's it. But you know what? Me, you, and God ain't even that healthy. I'm so happy to have my husband, don't get me wrong, but community is so important. I really want to talk about the power of community. Like, community, when I lost my community, when I stopped going to my church, when I stopped being around my family, when I stopped being around my friends, like, I broke, man. I lost myself. And as I said, trauma will isolate you. It will isolate you. And I'm so happy that I just shook myself out of that place. Because sometimes, if you're not careful, when you don't shake yourself out of that place, you can write yourself into a pit that is going to be very hard to get yourself out of. And I'm happy that God saved me from the pit. God saved me from the prison. And that's why I can come and stand at the palace and stand where I am as a married woman in my new house with my husband, and, you know, with new career, new money, new thing, everything new record. I can stand here smiling and be like, yeah, cool, 2022, I did some things, I made some mistakes, I went to the pit, I entertained trauma, but that ain't my story no more. You get me? That's not my story no more. So I'm just grateful to just be here, fam. I'm just grateful to be with God, and the fact that God has got me out of the pit. So I just hope that this blessed you. I hope that this really did bless you, and I hope that for anyone that is here listening, I pray that God shall meet you in your pit. I pray God shall meet you where you are right now. I pray that God, for every single person that is listening, that whatever they're going through, that Holy Spirit, you shall be able to minister to them. Whether they believe in you or not, God, may you show your goodness and your love. May you raise up people to pray for them, pray with them. Can you raise up a community around them? God, I just pray over every single soul. And I pray, God, that you'll bless them, cover them and keep them. God, thank you for their lives. And thank you for everything you're looking to do in them and through them. And God, I pray every single day, anything that's in us that can self-sabotage what you have for us, God, remove it. God, may you bless them in Jesus' name. Amen. Guys, I really hope that you've enjoyed this podcast episode. There was no structure, I'll be real, but I really hope that you know I'm back. I'm going to be bringing special guests. I'm going to be bringing my husband. I hope you guys know I'm going to be saying my husband a lot because he's my husband. I'm going to be bringing my husband. I'm going to be bringing special guests. I'm going to be bringing so many different types of people because I want to really, I don't want to say shift this podcast, but you guys would know that I'm a person of faith. But I really want this podcast to be a place where I encourage your faith in God, your faith in life, your faith to carry on, your faith to press on. Because life is lifing, man. Life is real. Life is hard. Life is not easy. Life is not linear. And sometimes you need that reminder to keep going. Sometimes you need that reminder. I want to be that voice, that the voices I needed this year, the voices I had that year, this year, the voices that encouraged me, the voices that kept me. I remember meeting with certain friends in my engagement period and randomly bursting out into tears because I was broken. And I want to thank every single person that I had meetings with this year. The people that held me, the people that prayed for me, the people when I had no way of praying, I had no way of looking to God, I had no way of letting God in, and you guys were there. You guys guided me. I know I wouldn't have got through this year without certain people. And my number one person has to be my husband. So big up you every single time, babe. I love you. Mr. Sterling Record. I love you with everything in me. And yeah. Guys, it's your girl Hayley Mulenda, aka Mrs. Record, yeah. And this is the Building You podcast. Be back, baby. Make sure you tune in and make sure you listen to all the other podcast episodes. Guys, I've got podcast episodes and there's more to come. Connect to me on social media at Hayley Mulenda, HayleyMulenda. And if you would like to book me for speaking, for conferences, for coaching, go to www.hayleymulenda.com. Plug to me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever, YouTube. Subscribe, and just know my husband will be coming on soon. I think we're going to start a YouTube channel soon. And I know some people will kind of say, oh, Hayley, only been married 2 minutes. You guys talking about marriage. Do you know what the thing is? We're not here to give marriage advice. First of all, we're marriage students. Like, we want to be students of this thing called marriage because we're not marriage experts. Like, we're marriage students. We're still learning. But I think Sterling and I can give a lot of insight on our journey to marriage because I feel like, especially being people of faith, transitioning from singlehood to engagement to marriage, like, I don't feel like there's a lot of transparent content out there, and I want to be transparent with my husband about how we abstain from sex, celibacy. How did Sterling navigate when I nearly lost faith? How have I navigated when Sterling's been discouraged? Like, how do you do that? How did we pay off our wedding? Like, so many different things. Like, listen, like, there's just so many things that I know that I hope you guys will be blessed by. I know that you guys will be blessed by because I know I needed that type of content, or I needed that type of words or wisdom when I was single or when I was planning my wedding. So yeah, I'm really excited with the new content, and I hope you guys like this new version of me. I hope you guys like this new Hayley Record, because that's my name now. I'm Hayley Mulenda. Mulenda is now my middle name, but my last name is now Record. And I'm so happy to be breaking new records with my husband. Yes, my husband's name is actually Sterling Record. I'm just so happy to be breaking new records, to tap into a new record. I'm tapping into new cycles, into new journey. I remember hearing God say a new record is gonna be your hashtag, because we are doing something new in our family. We're doing something new in our home. We're doing something new in our community. We are now setting a new record. And I'm so excited to be doing that and showing you guys a new record and a new version of me, which is now aka Mrs. Record. Guys, God bless and speak to you soon. Ciao.